Good afternoon, folks. Welcome back. I hope you had a nice lunch. Personally, I'm a great fan of the mushroom vol au vents, but that's just me. This closing session is going to examine how AI, as we all know, is revolutionizing everything from customer experience to the development process. It's interesting, I spoke to a few people at lunchtime, and lots of people are nervous about this. Lots of people are really not happy about this at all, without necessarily being sure why, and I would number myself in that camp particularly. But hopefully we'll be a little more enlightened after the next two presentations. Our first speaker is Shalini Goyal, a software engineering manager for Amazon, who is going to talk us through some real-world studies, stuff that they have done that hopefully you haven't heard of yet. So, Shalini.
So imagine you wake up and you pick up your phone and give some facial recognition to your phone so that you can get in there and maybe go to your social media app first and see the personalized feed for you over there. Maybe you go to your mailbox where you see the items which are meant for you and all of the spams taken away from you. You are not even seeing them. And then maybe you want to check the weather because you are heading to office and you want to figure out, what should I wear today? And then you want to get the live traffic updates. Once you reach to the office, you have to search for something. So you Google, of course. And then during the lunchtime, you're wondering how to reach to that new restaurant in town. And you open your virtual assistant to reach there. Soon after, it's time to go back home, and maybe you want to listen to your favorite music. Maybe something new, but which can match your taste. And then, when you're going to bed, maybe it's time to watch some videos. Imagine the number of times you have already used artificial intelligence already in your day-to-day life. If you don't trust me, fine. Not yet. But I'm going to show you some real-world studies which I have done during my research to make you believe that. So let's see what we feel at the end of this. Good afternoon to all of you. I'm Shalini. I'm an engineering manager at Amazon. You can call me Shalini. People sometimes confuse. They call me Shalini, Shalina, all sorts of different versions. Don't worry about that. It's been 2 years I'm working with Amazon, and prior to that, I worked for JP Morgan for about 8 years. Born and brought up in India, which you have probably figured out already, looking at me, Asian woman, fine. I did my master's from India. I lived there, I grew up there. And once I did my master's, I moved quickly because I wanted to see the world. I went to state first, and then one day when I came to Scotland for tourism, I sat somewhere on a hill, and I thought, this is the most beautiful place I have seen in my entire life. Wish I could live here. And guess what? As they say, wishes come true. Yeah, here I am between you guys. Just to tell you, that day, it was not rainy. It was not windy. And guess what? It was not cold as well, guys. But yeah, if I have to make that choice again, I think it wouldn't change. I would still love to live here. This is home now. Right, few disclaimers before we move on. First of all, I'm not going to make you an AI or ML expert. We are definitely going to touch upon few things, but not an expertise lesson over here. But I hope that you would feel inspired by some of the stories I'm going to share with you in next 25-30 minutes. A couple of more disclaimers. Though I'm from Amazon, I work there. All of the research I have done is based on my personal insights, personal time I have spent. Nothing in here has been endorsed from Amazon. So please don't think, oh, Amazon is saying this. No, it's me saying that. All right. So probably some people here might be new for all of the terminologies which we use on day-to-day basis, and maybe it's hard to understand what's the difference when we say artificial intelligence or machine learning. Can I just do a quick check in the room if there are some people who are still new to these terminologies where we say artificial intelligence, machine learning, or generative AI, or deep learning? Just some hands if you can raise. Oh, looks like the room is full of expertise. Cool, cool, awesome. Right, so let's see. How many people consider themselves experts if it comes to differentiating between these terminologies? No hands raised. Come on, guys, I know you had lunch. Okay, I'll quickly walk you through what the definitions so that we can relate these terminologies when we talk about some of the examples further. So artificial intelligence, made of two words, artificial and intelligence. Artificial, which is something not real, or the literal meaning synthetic. Intelligence, which is like mimicking human behavior. And that's what artificial intelligence is, something which can mimic human behavior. Virtual bot is a great example of that. But when we talk about machine learning, it's nothing outside artificial intelligence. It is a subset of artificial intelligence. The way to think about machine learning is think about some, say, mathematical algorithms based on statistics or probability, where you create an algorithm and you train it based on lots of data. You try to teach the algorithm what is right or what is wrong. For example, Gmail. Your spams are in a different folder. So there sits a machine learning model which understands if an email coming to you is actually a spam or is actually right for your inbox. Then comes deep learning, which is a subset of machine learning. The way to think about deep learning is connect it with your human brain. Like the way human brain works, or there are neurons, it is based on the neural network. We'll see a lot of different examples of deep learning in coming slides. Now, generative AI, I think everyone's favorite these days. The way to think about it is it generates the new patterns. It generates the new content. So it is taking all of the data from the models which it has been trained on, but then it generates something new itself. That's generative AI, and again, we'll see some examples related to that. Now, when I was trying to come up with this talk, I thought, like, what's going on with the customer experience these days? How is it changing? And I tried to find out some of the trends related to that. What I realized that the customer experience today has actually evolved a lot, especially after COVID. Now, during the COVID, we all were limited to our own houses, our own premises. Now think about it, that the digital transformation went to another level where not just the human touch points, but the digital touch points became a necessity for the services and for the customers both. Today you can go to the websites, you can download the apps for most of the products, most of the services, and you can also go to the social media to find out about them. Personalization became a key. In some of the earlier talks we had today from some of my co-speakers, they also touched upon personalization and how important that is. Predictive analysis, where we think or figure out what has been the user behavior, what has been the user journey so far, and what can we predict on the basis of that, and how can we evolve the customer experience based on it. Similarly, in another talk we had today this morning, we talked about the improved efficiency, not just for the customers, but also for the employees of our organizations. We think, how can we actually bring in the techniques which can do the work, reducing the human effort, such that the humans can actually spend the time where it is needed. Now, let me show you some of the examples which I found when I was researching for this talk, and hopefully they'll make you excited. The first one in my list, oops. Oh, right, okay. So the first one in my list is EcoHub, Amazon's EcoHub. Just 2 months back, Amazon launched this. This is Alexa-enabled and kind of gives you full control over your home devices. For example, if you are heading out and you want to turn on your security on your door, you can do that. If you want to add something to your shopping list, you can do that. You want to set the temperature, controlling your thermostat. You want to think about who's on your door while you're away to the office. Video doorbell, unable with that. So having said that, this is one of the example where AI is actually being used to provide you a lot under one umbrella, one hood, right? The conversational AI by the means of natural language processing, where you're giving, in a human language, you're talking to Alexa, you're giving it a control. Just say, Alexa, I'm leaving the home. And you can set everything on your app to say, when I'm leaving the home, set the temperature to this, turn on my security camera, turn on my doorbell, or whatever. There are multiple devices you can attach to it. And you can just have control everything under one thing. The other one is actually my personal favorite. When I was young, I always fancied to have small hair. But as you can imagine, I grew up in India, and the trend was to keep long hair. What I was told was, girls are supposed to have long hair. You look nice if you have long hair. And I was like, no, I want to have short hair. Every time I would go to salon, they would say, well, you should think again. Once your hairs are cut, you cannot grow them back very quickly. So you know what? Go back. And they would never give me a haircut which is short, like very smart. So today I have found a solution, and I fancy this. In London, Amazon has got its salon where you can walk in, book your appointment, and see, using the augmented reality, how you're going to actually look like when you change your hairstyle. You may want it short, or maybe not. You may want to change your hair color, or maybe not. But you can see how you're going to actually look like. So it works based on the augmented reality. Let me quickly touch upon that, how augmented reality works. So the way it works is, it takes your presence. So let's say I go in there, they'll take my picture, and then they will augment the reality, meaning taking my real picture, they would create something on top of it. That's AR in simple terms. So I can see how I'm gonna look like with small hairs, short hairs in different styles, or if I turn my hair red, I fancy that as well. Or if I turn half of my hair red and the other half blue maybe, but I can see that all and can decide. I don't know how many people would fancy that here, but yeah. The machine learning and AR got an intersection over here where the models are learning based on the user data how or what they actually like or what they would want to see next time. I can also, by the way, when I go in there, I can also save the images for the next time and say that next time when I come, maybe turn all my hair purple. Yeah, maybe. Okay, cool. So I think after all of that styling, I'll become very hungry. So I would want to go to a restaurant to eat something. Yeah, I think that's what I would like. Now, let me take you straight to California from here. So California has got a brand new restaurant just 2 months ago where you walk in as a customer, and if you're the first-time customer there, you got to create your login, you got to enter your credit card details, just like all of the other places you go. But it stores all of your information because you have created your login ID and all that. And guess what? Once you have placed your order, there is something called Flippy, which is a robotic arm, and it will look for the fresh potatoes to make your fries. And then there is a burger bot, which will actually turn your burgers on the exact temperature it should, and at the exact timing as it should. It will prepare your order, and it will serve you. Isn't it amazing? I mean, I haven't seen any such thing before, so I would definitely love to visit there and see that. And guess what? They are actually already thinking about creating a museum with the restaurant so that the kids can go there, educate themselves, do a technology kind of display so that people can learn about the technology which is used there. With that, I think the customer service has gone to another level where we are talking about the real-time interactions, the robots serving the customers. You think about the human safety over here. No human has to go to the boiling hot oil and that kind of temperature or slippage, as we usually read in the news, accidents and all of that has been avoided with this advancement here. There is increased efficiency as well here, because now you can imagine all your orders are being prepared by these robots. So we have cut down the human cost. They can probably do something better. Moving on to the next one, which I'm certain everyone's favorite, is the ChatGPT. Right? So the way ChatGPT works, or the way to think about it, is so let's just break down the term for people who are not well aware. ChatGPT, right? It's based on the transformers, which are pre-trained, generative, pre-trained transformers. That's GPT. So it works based on the deep learning, where the neural networks, a particular type of neural network, which is called transformer, that gets trained based on large, massive amount of data. You might have heard the term LLMs, or the large language models. Now, ChatGPT is already changing the lives. It's 24/7 available. Someone said this morning that chatbots are actually unsung heroes. I think that goes for ChatGPT as well, though I'm sure people do sing the songs of ChatGPT. The way it is changing the education. Now, some of the views are that it's changing the education system for wrong, because there are chances of cheating, students using it for their homeworks, etc. I don't believe that. There was a news even 2 days before on Sky News, where they covered a 30-second clip, but they said AI is actually helping the students, especially the ones who are lacking that, who are not able to reach to the places where it is available. So it's actually doing just the other way, which is helping us. And who knows, if you have to write a social media post, let's say, probably you can take the help of ChatGPT. Okay, I use Netflix quite a lot, but do you know how the artificial intelligence is actually working behind it? Netflix is actually looking at your browsing history to the extent that it actually looks at the date and time you logged in, what did you watch, of course, and what device you used. Maybe you were actually going to work when you turned on your mobile phone and watched an episode of something, right? It is taking all of that into consideration to predict what you're going to like next. What is that which you would love to see, and according to your taste. I went to a party on a weekend, and I was just talking to my friends. They all were watching something very common. I don't remember the name. And then they were like, oh, you're not watching it. It was just in our recommendation, top one. And I said, it just did not come to my recommendation. So no two people, mostly, are getting the same recommendations. But if you're watching the same thing as me, then probably yes, because Netflix is also trying to see what people with the similar browsing history or similar data which it has gathered in past may like next. So if I like something which you haven't seen so far, they may be proposing you to watch that next. It has changed the way customers think, because it has taken the personalization again at another level. Now, let's take a pause here and think, is all of our experience really good with artificial intelligence? Maybe not. Let me show you some of the challenges which we are actually facing as a society because of the artificial intelligence and machine learning. Someone talked about the human touch this morning, actually. They said human touch is still needed. There are about 60% of the people in the UK and in the United States who prefer that they talk to a human rather than a virtual bot. Is there anyone in the audience who thinks the same and had a different experience talking to a virtual bot and was actually annoyed when they did not connect with a human, then a bot was responding to them over and over? Anyone? Oh, looks like so many. Oh, no. Yes, I had the similar experience as well. So I think that's definitely one of the major challenge with artificial intelligence. The bots are still not at the level where they can replace the human interaction. Biasness and unfairness in the data is something which is seen frequently. There is less data available for say, diverse opinions, or, and it's not just about the gender diversity, by the way. It's also about the groups which are underrepresented, especially in the medical science, where it becomes too difficult to make the decisions on the basis of the data, because you know that the data can be biased for one or the other groups. There can be lack of trust, hallucinations, deepfake, all sorts of problems. But again, I wanted to find out, is this all real? Are we really facing the challenges as I'm being shown? Or are there any examples I can pick up and try to understand this better? So let me take you on a journey again. The first one in my list was chatbot failures. And you already said you had seen some. In 2016, Microsoft launched a bot named Tay, short for Taylor. And guess what? Taylor Swift was not very happy about this. So the chatbot was actually invented and launched on Twitter to respond to the people. But within 16 hours, Microsoft had to take it down. The audience on Twitter fed it all sorts of wrong data, because of which it started producing all of the racist and sexist comments on Twitter. And of course, nobody was going to like that. 16 hours, guys, 16 hours, it was down. What a disaster. Anyway, another one which bothers me quite a lot, and I'll talk about it why. Another one is related to dynamic pricing. So there's a famous singer in the United States named Bruce Springsteen. Last year, about summertime, he had a concert where the initial price of the ticket was $250, just $250. But as the demand surged, the ticket price went up to $5,000. And that could be the mortgage you're paying for maybe 2 months or 3 months. So while you want to go and listen to your favorite singer, you still are not ready. I'm not ready to pay $5,000 for a concert. I would probably pick up and go to another concert and still have fun, right? Amazingly and interestingly, Ticketmaster actually now offers dynamic pricing to all of the artists who are actually going there. They can still apply that, and the same thing can happen. Very similar example comes from the hotels and the airlines. So a few weeks before, or I should say, but a couple of months before, I was trying to book a trip to Morocco. The initial ticket price, when I first logged in, was about half of the price when I actually booked the ticket. And my mistake was that I was over and over just going to the website and trying to get the ticket, and was trying to convince my husband, let's book the ticket, only if he would listen. So that's kind of causing quite a lot of problem, not just for the customers actually, for the service providers as well. Think about this: 2 airlines trying to compete about the prices they are providing on their websites. Now, if one of them brings their price down because the other has brought it down as well, then they might be selling their ticket underpriced, right? But as the demand surges, they have to increase their price. But at the same time, they got to think about the competitors, back and forth, right? So it's quite a difficult situation for these service providers as well to think about how they actually want to apply the dynamic pricing behind. It works based on the deep learning again, but then the algorithms become very complex at some point. Deepfake. The way deepfake works is that you would see a person talking about something which is not real, right? It's fake. In last 2 months, or I think sometime in January actually, there are about more than 100 videos of Rishi Sunak which went viral on internet. They were being generated from 23 different countries. And Facebook had to take them down, of course. It took them down within 24 hours or so. But by that time, about 400,000 people saw those videos. Imagine the kind of impact it has on the sentiments of people, on the customer's sentiment, what kind of impression it has left there. Now, not everyone, like this room, is aware of the artificial intelligence and what could be fake and what could not be. A normal human being might just see them and believe, Nobody is going to find out if what I saw was real or not. And this problem is increasing. Not just Rishi Sunak's, like direct videos. There was another video from BBC newsreader, Sarah Campbell, who appeared to talk about Rishi Sunak, in some scandal and all that. Why would people not believe that if they don't know about deepfake, if they don't know about artificial intelligence actually producing these videos? That's destroying customers' experience, in my view. So what kind of strategies and solutions we can apply to for what we just saw? I think these are a number of problems, and I don't think there is a silver bullet to it. We got to pick up these problems one by one and have to solve them. We need to do the bias mitigation by providing the better quality data, by making sure that the data is not biased for one or the other thing. We got to educate and communicate our folks, not just not just the customers, but also the people who are working for the artificial intelligence, creating these models and producing the tech. I think continuous learning is something which we have to do, and we have to apply it not just on the models, but on the humans as well. Human and AI collaboration would be much needed, and that has to be applied, again, as a strategy on our businesses. So with all of that, if I try to summarize, the good studies I found, the not so great studies I found, I think the way I would summarize that is that the future is bright, but we got to think what it would look like. And if I try to think about that, I think conversational AI, that would evolve quite a lot. There would be an evolution of that. There would be more virtual bots. There would be more assistants talking to you, which would become a norm. They would be able to deal with the more complex kind of interactions and would give you more human-like interactions, I should say. We would have to evolve the products and the services constantly based on the customer demand. Customer would be the key of everything, of course. Right? We will also have to think about the customer's journey, their behavior, the user's data, what they have been liking, what they have not been liking. We'll have to do some sentiment analysis based on the feedback we are going to receive, and accordingly, the products would evolve. I think there would be more fraud detection. There would be more frauds. But there would be more fraud detection technologies as well, which will come into play. After the deepfake videos of Rishi Sunak, Facebook, IBM, Oracle, and there were a few other organizations actually, which came together, formed a committee, and took a pledge to actually look into these kind of problems and resolve that. There is a lot of work which still is needed to be done on that front. We are not there yet. It is just the beginning. So while the deepfake videos are the beginning, similarly, dealing with them, coming up with some strategies and making sure that the content which reaches to the consumers, to the end users, is actually valid, is actually authentic, then that would also take some work. There would be rise of multimodal AI. And what I mean by that, if I'll quickly touch upon that, if you have heard about Gemini, with, model which is capable of image generation, video generation, and the text, that's clubbing all of the sorts of different models together. There would be a rise of that, and the customers would demand that more and more. With the help of augmented reality and virtual reality, I think the customers' interaction and their experience would become more fun and more engaging. Now, with all of that, I want to leave you with a video which actually changed the way I was thinking when I saw some of the not so great examples related to artificial intelligence. And let's see if they change your way of thinking as well.
Today is an opportunity for Anne and Bill to have a conversation through our brain decoding to facilitate what we think would resemble a future use of an actual real-life application of the technology.
We want to try to basically create a demonstration where we're decoding the text the speech and the avatar at the same time from Anne's brain as she tries to silently attempt to speak. We just trained some new models yesterday, so we might need to test it a little bit.
Okay.
Because like,
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll run
It
through
should
some
work.
practice runs.
The device is an electrocorticography grid, which is attached to a pedestal, which is screwed onto the participant's skull. Anne is the very first person to have this combination.
I think you are wonderful.
In the training lab, we really focus on restoring voice to people that have lost it due to conditions like stroke or ALS.
What we're picking up on are neural activity related directly to the attempts to move her facial muscles, and that's what we're able to decode into speech.
Hey Anne, how's it going?
It is good to see you.
Giving them the ability to communicate again with their loved ones and caregivers is really what we're looking to do.
I was thinking about running to the store.
What time will you be home?
In about an hour.
Do not make me laugh.
That's the first time we've ever had a conversation using this system.
In order to communicate in her day-to-day life, she has an assistive communication device. These are dollar store glasses, and she interfaces with it using a little reflective sticker on them. It's very slow, and the device now is very old, but she relies on it.
For us to have that conversation using her Dynavox would probably be like a 5 to 7 minute conversation.
It was nice to have a conversation. I forget how slow this machine is.
When Anne was 30 years old, she was playing volleyball with some friends and had a stroke, which led to the condition that she has now, which is locked-in syndrome. At this point, she had a 6-month-old child and a 7-year-old child.
You are truly wonderful people.
The physicians have no idea why this happened. That was now 18 years ago.
Hand that to me, please.
How can we create technology that can help people really meaningfully contribute with all sorts of abilities?
Hi, how are things going?
Hi Anne, things are going fine. How are you feeling about the Blue Jays today?
Anything is possible.
Oh, you're showing not a lot of confidence in them today, are you?
You are right about that.
I guess we'll see, won't we?
Right. And I think such cases are our opportunities. This is from just last 6 months. I think this video was covered sometime in the summer last year. The machine learning model which worked behind it, it was trained on Anne's unique brain signals, which it was able to read, and then was trained to generate, using the natural language processing, was able to generate the text which you saw on the screen. With that, I would say personalization is something which we got to focus to provide to our customers. Customer is gonna sit in the center. If this was an audience, customer got to sit somewhere in the center. Jeff Bezos said once that the #1 reason of Amazon's success is that we are obsessive with our customers' demands. And I think that applies everywhere. When we talk about the services, experience service industry, creating a great customer experience. We talked about the customer satisfaction in one of the morning session. I think that is paramount. There is no run away from that. We got to focus on it. The human touch point would matter, because without the human touch point, I think it's something which is very machinery. So we have to leverage the artificial intelligence, but humans have to leverage it. Artificial intelligence is made for humans. Humans have created that, right? That has to continue. And the challenges like and faced, I think these are our opportunities to think and do better as human beings. With that, I think the future awaits. Thank you so much.
Right, we'll probably have to use this again, but our second speaker in this afternoon session, it is okay now, is it? Okay, I'm getting the thumbs up, that's fine, you don't need to use this. Right. Is April Edwards. She's spoken at our conferences before. DevOps practice lead at GitHub, about how AI is revolutionizing software development. So, April, over to you.
I was going to go back to the old photo because it was, there we go. Talk about AI not sprucing that up. So I was here a year ago in Edinburgh with everyone. I was actually at Microsoft at the time. Now I'm at GitHub. I made the move last year. Why'd I go to GitHub? For a change, something a little different. Microsoft acquired GitHub about 5.5 years ago, and there's been a huge revolution in AI and what we do with it. So I'm based here in the UK, believe it or not. They let me stay, they gave me a passport, so I am officially British. You cannot get rid of me. But I work with EMEA-based customers. I've worked with various MSPs in the UK prior to joining Microsoft and GitHub, and now I go around the world teaching people about the tech here at GitHub. And how many of you have currently used GitHub or have used GitHub in the past? How many of you used GitHub in 2008 when we started? All right, a few of you out there. And it was literally just a version control platform, right? You stored your code in there, it held version control. And now how many of you are using GitHub Copilot today? A couple people. How many of you are scared of using GitHub Copilot? How many of you have never heard of it? All right, quite a few. Well, GitHub Copilot is the world's most widely adopted AI developer tool. And I'm going to use the word developer here, okay? This can be a little bit divisive in how I say this. Everyone's a developer. If you're telling a machine to do something for you, you're a developer. You may not be a programmer writing long, form code, but here at GitHub, we released Copilot just over 2 years ago. And we released this in collaboration with Microsoft and OpenAI. We use first-party products to instill trust in our products. And it's had booming success. It's been amazing. It's had some of the biggest exponential growth we've ever seen in the industry, and it's been across our customer base. And you, the customers, have given us feedback on that. So we're going to look at how GitHub Copilot is used today. But I want to look at how we do our jobs. How many of you get to write code and do the job you intend to do 8 hours a day? I don't. I have to sit in meetings, I have to wait on other people, I have to get permissions to do things. I'm constantly waiting on others or sitting in meetings, and I'm actually not getting to write a lot of code. So the time that I do have to write code is very, very finite. So the times that I do have, I have to maximize. And what we find with a lot of our customers is we're measuring time to success. And other times, we're not as successful when we write code. But we know that from the pull request to deploying our code, AI is going to define every aspect of that developer experience. Now, with AI at every step, that's fundamentally going to redefine what developer productivity looks like and our happiness. And that starts exactly with GitHub Copilot. Now, GitHub Copilot has been around for about 2 years, just over 2 years now. It's generated over 3 billion lines of code. So the applications you're consuming today potentially could have been written with GitHub Copilot in some way, shape, or form. Now, this was the first scaled AI pair programmer out in the industry, and it's the most widely adopted AI developer tool. We are building AI into every part of GitHub today. So it's no longer just source control. It just doesn't hold version control for your code. We want to make it the AI-powered developer platform. So from anywhere from the idea to the issue that's being created to building and coding, even to securing your code and deploying it to github.com or elsewhere, GitHub is powered by Copilot at every step along the way. And this is happening today, and I'm going to go ahead and show you all what it looks like and hopefully take away some of the fears that we have around using Copilot. We have over 1 million paid users using GitHub Copilot. Because it's so widely adopted, we want to make sure that AI is hopefully used for good, but available to all. And from this worldwide adoption, we've seen over 50,000 enterprise-level customers use it. So whether you're a partner, I was working with a major UK partner this week and showing them how to use it, how they can leverage it, and hopefully tamping down some of those fears. So it's really one of the biggest increase in productivity that we've seen in gains since we got rid of punch cards and assembly language. And if any of you remember using punch cards and assembly language, anyone in the room? A few of you? All right, a few hands. One of the biggest statistics we see with GitHub Copilot is people are writing code 55% faster. Now, that's a 55% productivity gain. So if we go back to that graph that I showed you, where we have that very limited time in writing code, we're able to do more with the limited time we do have. And people really love using it. They might be hesitant at first, but we're here to show you how it can help you. We use it a lot with our open source maintainers, but even students and teachers. We're changing the way people are learning to write code and leveraging it. And we see a lot of customers in Fortune 500 companies using it today. So let's have a look at it. So while GitHub Copilot is fairly mature, and it's a trusted AI pair programmer used by now more than 1 million developers, that number keeps increasing, it's fantastic at turning natural language comments into code and predicting the code that you need next. So if we look at the screen here, I want to add maybe a new route to my Node application. Copilot's going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and type in what I want it to do. And when I write this comment explaining what I want, Copilot is going to write that code for me. Now, it's going to follow the patterns I've used elsewhere in my code. It's not taking anywhere else. Now, if it doesn't give me exactly what I want the first time, that's okay. It can make me more productive by allowing me to reiterate what I'm doing. So this is a really important part of using AI, iterating what you've put into it. So, and we also have a feature called GitHub Copilot Chat. So you don't just have to put it in line with your code, but we've made this generally available. And this is just like working with a pair programmer or your rubber duck. So for example, I can ask it general programming questions, like what password standard should I check for my code? But in this case, I'm going to see what the output is, and it's even giving me some sample code I can use. So it's explaining to me what I want it, what it's going to do, how it's doing it, and it's giving me some sample code to get started with. Now, in this next example, I have some password validation code that's already ready, but it's a regular expression, and I'm not very good at regular expressions, and they're not very easy to interpret. So I'm using a /explain command in GitHub Copilot Chat to help me explain the code that I'm unfamiliar with, even if it's a regular expression, which might be easier for you as a different developer. Now, I want to touch on language here. I speak American English, sometimes I speak British English, and a lot of us, English is a second language. So the way in which we use our context to speak to GitHub Copilot is going to be different for each and every one of us. So we've created these short form commands to help bring in that context. Because if I ask a question in one form of my English and then ask it in a different way, it's going to give me a very different answer. But very simply in this example, I want it to explain my code. So instead of saying, GitHub Copilot, can you please explain my code, or say, give me the stinking code, or more code now, or however we want to write it, I can do /explain. So I can even ask it specific questions about the code I'm looking at. And now in this case, I'm pretty sure we're generating some invalid passwords in our code, because we've all done this, right? And I look at GitHub Copilot, and sure enough, it looks like yes, we have, and it's given me a suggested fix. So it's pulling out some vulnerabilities in my code and giving me a fix on how to resolve it. Now think about how many vulnerabilities we put into our code accidentally as humans, because as humans, we make some mistakes. But I want to show you something new. So GitHub Copilot Chat can be invoked inline in the code base. We just don't have to use the add-in in VS Code. So to get to it, I can highlight my code or put my cursor over the relevant code. And if I hit Control or Command-I, it will bring up the Copilot context. And for example here, I'm going to ask for a change in natural language, and it's going to show me the changes it's going to make. And it's going to give me that display output just like a Git differential, so I can see what it's removing with what it's replacing with. And then I can go ahead and accept that change, or I can ask for it to reiterate if I don't like what it's presented to me. So we also have with GitHub Copilot Chat inline. It's also really useful for documentation. Who likes writing documentation? Anyone? One person, there's always one. Fantastic. So I'm going to use the /doc command, and it's going to add some comments to my code. Not just for me, but for the person coming after me. How do we comment on our code bases? How do we make notes? Because documentation is key. So how do we not make mistakes again? Documentation. And it's giving me those comments very specific to the language I'm working in. So if you're using Python, Node, C#, whatever it is you're using, it will make those comments for that language. It has that ability to support multiple languages. So even better, I'm going to ask for some tests for my code, because we all love writing tests. So even though I'm using GitHub Copilot Chat inline, it's smart enough to know I need them in another file that I've opened. So when I go ahead and accept the changes, it's going to go ahead and create a new file for me for the test I need to write in my code. Very often with customers, we're looking to have 90%, 80% code coverage, and it's a dream, right? And sometimes writing tests are hard, but we know that we need to write tests. They're crucial to our code bases. So in this instance, we would have been able to do that, save it as a new file. We can test our test, see if it runs, and hopefully prevent future issues in our code base. So, but like me, GitHub Copilot just doesn't live in the editor. It's also with me once I finish my work and I've submitted a pull request. Did you know that half of all pull requests have no description in them at all? So let's go ahead and fix that. So GitHub Copilot for pull requests is going to provide a description of my changes, and best of all, it just doesn't list the changes. It's going to give me descriptions of what has been changed and links to the documents of what it does, giving me those deep links to the lines of code that I've changed. So if you think of submitting a pull request and making code changes, often we're faced with time crunch, getting our code changes in time, and often customers are pushing for us to make these changes pretty quickly. And when we're rushed, we don't always put in good descriptions. So this helps take off some of that burden, and let's get that 50% down on our pull request so they have very valid descriptions for the people reviewing it and also people picking that up. So we're also bringing the power of AI to GitHub Advanced Security. So as a developer, security is probably not my favorite thing, but is the most important. So not only does it detect the security issues in my code, but it's going to suggest a fix for us. I can go ahead and accept that fix, and it's going to go ahead and create a pull request so it can be reviewed by my team, or we can even start a GitHub code space, which I'll explain in a minute, and it will examine it more closely. So when I open up the GitHub code space, I'm able to edit my code in the browser, and I'll show you all that in a minute as well. So I've kind of showed you all some functionalities and features with GitHub Copilot Chat. You can use it in Visual Studio Code, or GitHub Codespace. Now, a lot of you might be writing languages or you have a preferred IDE, and maybe that's something like a JetBrains IDE. So if you ever use IntelliJ, WebStorm, PyCharm, it's all in preview and available today. So you can use your favorite editor, but also GitHub Copilot Chat is in your pocket. So if you're out walking your dog, grabbing a cup of coffee, we're bringing GitHub Copilot Chat to your phone. Why? Because the reality is we work in a very mobile workforce. It is going to be available. It is available currently in iOS and Android apps, and it has that natural language ability on your device. So I can literally be on the move. I can answer questions in my repositories, my files, my documentation. I can pick up my phone and answer things as I'm on the move, as I am today. So that's going to be Copilot wherever you go, whether you're waiting in line for a coffee, walking a dog, or sometimes you're sitting in bed and just don't feel like getting out of bed in the morning, but you want to be productive at work. I never do that. Every day. So it's even getting more powerful, which is pretty cool. So yes, there's a lot of power, and with great power comes great responsibility. This became generally available in December 2023. It's been made available to everyone. Going a step further, on Tuesday this week, we released GitHub Copilot Enterprise, which is the GitHub Copilot chat in github.com. How many of you use your browser itself when writing code or using GitHub? Anyone? Right? And if you have to switch that context, right, sometimes you lose that ability on your focus. I know that if I'm in my browser, I'm looking at something, I magically start looking at flights. Somewhere sunny and warm. Well, it's sunny here, but sunnier and warm, right? I lose the context, and I have that very minute amount of time every day to write my code or to make those changes. So by putting GitHub Copilot Chat in the .com feature, we wanted to make it as part of the home for software development. So it's where most projects begin, is in github.com, So that's why we wanted to put that feature in there. Developers are collaborating in github.com, and the open source community builds their software in github.com, and that's where we maintain the world's code. So we wanted to make sure we have that ability there. So all the ability to generate the pull requests as we just saw, dig into your code, and hopefully make your life a little bit easier. And I want to talk about security. How many of you love security? That's up there, documentation for me, right? I'll be honest. But if you think about the breaches that have happened in the world, it's because someone has put a password somewhere. How many of you have ever put a password in a plain text file? Or a customer's password in a plain text file? It's okay, we're all friends here. I've done it. Uber's done it. They've done it multiple times. They had a breach last year. Why? Because they put a password in a plain text file in their GitHub repository. They did it in 2017, and they had breaches that cost them customer data. Now think of your customer base, and if your customers found out you put one of their passwords in a plain text file, how would they react? You're going to lose the trust of the customer. will yell at your team and you potentially will lose them as a customer, and then they're going to tell the rest of your customers, and they want to shout about it when you make a mistake. So we want to talk about ways we can prevent and be a little bit more proactive in preventing our passwords and code. So we have something called GitHub Advanced Security, which is built into the GitHub platform. So we can scan your code. Your code is treated as data, and with that we can find those vulnerabilities, track it, trace it, and remediate it. Secret scanning. Again, Uber does not use secret scanning, and that's pretty apparent because they keep getting their secrets exposed. So being able to scan for secrets, pull those out, and then we call it supply chain security. Dependency scanning. How many of you consume open source software? Or do you even know you're consuming open source software? But you want to trust that software to stay up to date, and if you're consuming it and using it, you need to know how it's being treated, and is that secure? So we have something called Dependabot, which is the dependency scanning to help secure that whole supply chain in there. So we've also added AI into that because security is hard. And as a developer, that's not always something that every developer puts at the forefront of their mind. So when we talk about code scanning, the autofix, okay? The autofix feature is really cool. It looks at your code, it detects the security vulnerability, opens up a pull request after your code's been scanned, and it goes even further by telling you not only where you have the vulnerability, but how to fix it. It opens up a pull request, gives you the suggested fix, and your team can review it. Saves quite a bit of time in actually fixing those things. And that's not all. So we also have added some AI into the secret scanning capability. So secret scanning before would tell you that you had a secret exposed, but now we've put it into the secret scanning tool, which is in preview today. This is going to help you find secrets that don't have patterns. A lot of you, if you're deploying to the cloud or even on-prem, if you're using something like Azure, Amazon, AWS, or GCP, and you're calling a key or a connection string, secret scanning can pick up on that. But sometimes we're not always using those unique patterns. We're doing custom patterns internal our code or into our software. And this has actually been this has been a cause for a lot of exploits in the last few years. So how do we prevent that? Again, we don't want to lose that customer trust. So the two hardest things in computer science is really naming things and regular expressions. So we're making it easier so that your own custom patterns can be detective secrets with the AI power of GitHub Copilot. Now, we want to personalize it to your organization. We talk about how GitHub Copilot can work, but we want to go a step further. Now, when we say customize it to your organization, we have a whole GitHub.com trust center of how Copilot works, how the legality works. I totally encourage you to look at it. But a lot of customers have private code bases where their code is not stored externally, or they have certain coding patterns, things that they don't want to expand. So when we put GitHub Copilot in GitHub.com, we can see the repositories that I've listed, and we were calling them document sets. We're now calling them knowledge bases, so an internal knowledge base of your private repositories. We're going to ask Copilot how we're going to create a short URL for a website that I was working on. Now, large language models like the one that uses Copilot and powers Copilot have a strong generalist knowledge, but not a strong specific knowledge to what your code is doing. Maybe you're using open source libraries or other popular frameworks, and it suggested a fix using that tiny URL, and that's great, but that's really generic. I want to get to something that's more specific to how my organization's writing code. So we're going to point it towards our internal documentation at github.com, which is privatized, and we call it the hub. And at the hub, we have our own URL shortener that gives us a gh.io code, and it's going to search through our internal docs here, and it's going to use it to answer the question. So the output is specific to what my organizational standards determine. So it's not only knowing about the correct context, or the chat ops as we like to call it, but also be able to query and know what works in our internal systems. So it's inferring from my question what data it should command, and it's giving me an example from that inferred data. And it also gives me some really easy, nice copy-paste ability, so I can copy the code commands out, which is pretty cool. So I want to show you another example. We have a project called Blackbird at GitHub. This is the search engine that powers GitHub. So if you go into github.com and you want to search, I'm going to ask it a specific question: what is the geometric filter? Now, we have not published any of this publicly. This is only internal information because I have given GitHub Copilot access to my repository. It's going to answer the questions based off of my repository and my internal company's code. So when we look at what it's generating, it's referencing specific files, and it's giving us a breakdown of how the structure works on those files with examples, and it's referencing those files. And and it's pretty much going to be as good as any answer we're going to get from the actual internal Blackbird team. What I love about it is we use a lot of Ruby and legacy data on GitHub. GitHub was founded in 2008. We have a giant monolith. It is a mess. So yes, sometimes that tribal knowledge sits with the person. If that person leaves or they're not available, they're in another time zone, being able to get this information when I need it on the fly in my time zone is really crucial. So, and we're not done yet. So we've created what we call custom models. We're calling this fine-tuning models, where you create your own large language model effectively. We've done a lot of work with AMD, Microsoft 365, and the Office team, and we're taking a model like the ChatGPT 4 model and tuning it on your company's code base. This is great for languages that are not used as heavily. Anyone here ever coded in COBOL? A few of you, yeah? Did you know there's 6 flavors of COBOL? 6. I had no idea. I thought there was like 1. And I work with customers that often have 3 flavors. So they're actually using the fine-tuning model capability here to create GitHub Copilot suggestions based off of the 3 flavors of COBOL they're using, and there's 6. Never knew that. If you're using any languages like PowerShell, PowerShell doesn't have a massive open source presence, so a lot of the samples aren't as up to date as you would like them. Or maybe using another legacy language. AMD themselves, when they build their hardware, are using Verolang. Verolang is a language that I don't know, never heard of until I started working with AMD, but we got them onto the alpha test of the customization capability to test how it worked. And one thing we did is we tested how they accepted, what their acceptance rate was, and that was a measure of success for us. So if you're working in github.com or your IDE, you can check the performance of a database query. So many of you, in this case, we're going to query data stacks and how it's performing. We have some new APIs available that are connecting to external partners with Copilot, so we can extend Copilot not just on what you're doing and in the chat capability, but some of those other partners that you're working with. So we also might want to check the status of a feature flag with Launch Darkly. We use feature flags internally at GitHub often. Or if any of you have used Postman to check your APIs, we can query Postman as well. So we're including a lot of third-party tools. We've launched this program. Some of you may recognize some of these if you're using Databricks for data, Datadog for metrics, and Pulumi. I do a lot of work with a lot of the infrastructure as code providers. So we're hooking into it to not only do our code base, but also what they can pull from their stuff. So all these new features are really cool, really great. Remember I talked about that short link, gh.io? That's how we create them. Through our documentation. So all these new features are available. You can sign up and look at them today. But I want to show you all something with a demo. If we can go ahead and pull up the demo real fast. So let's switch screens. So because we've just launched the new features in GitHub Copilot Enterprise, they have changed a lot of the features I have access to. So this is github.com. This is the code base right here. Sorry, let me move this guy down. This is what runs github.com. This is it. So we're going to play with github.com, hopefully not take it down. And I'm going to show you what Copilot looks like. Copilot is literally with me wherever I go in my code base. Copilot's going to sit right up here in the chat feature right there. If I go into a pull request that any of my colleagues have opened up, let me go ahead and auth in. Broke it. Speaking of using AI for facial recognition. So I can go ahead and look at any of my colleagues' comments here. And this is real live production code in github.com. We're running a ton of checks. We've automated a lot of the tasks, and we can see that I have the Copilot actions here. So if I want to comment on my colleague's pull request, I can summarize, or I can outline. I can not only just do a summary, but I can outline everything that's happened as well. So I've created that documentation. But I want to go ahead and pull up the thing I spoke to you about before, which is a GitHub code space. So I talked about github.com being a lot of legacy code. For me to download github.com onto my laptop would take 46 minutes. I'm on a PC. I also have a Mac. So when I clone that code, it takes a while to get everything set up and get everything ready. So instead of spinning that all up locally, I'm going to go ahead and create a GitHub code space. A GitHub code space is effectively VS Code in the cloud in a secure development environment. I'm going to go ahead and let it spin up. So instead of taking it 45 minutes, it's going to go ahead and spin up in less than a minute. And that's how we get all of our team coding and writing documentation and contributing to the code base on day 0 at GitHub. So my first day at GitHub last year, I was putting code into production. So it's going to spin up that entire code base as we see on the left-hand side, give us our entire coding environment. And the other cool thing is I use VS Code locally on my machine. It's going to sync all my extensions across. So I have my coding environment, but it also gives me the extensions I need to develop on the GitHub code base, so Ruby, Rails, and all the other languages. The other thing it's going to load up is GitHub Copilot Chat. We have it enabled for all of the folks at GitHub. Now I want to talk about using AI for good here for a minute. So we talked a little bit about some ways that it needs improvement. I can ask GitHub Copilot lots of things like docs or explain, help me out. Help, I use help all the time, right? And it will tell me all the features I can use. But I want to ask Copilot a really important question. Should I have a coffee? Copilot can only answer within the guardrails that it's given. Okay, so if I were to ask it, who's the coolest speaker on the stage at the moment, Copilot can't answer. We put boundaries in place to give it only the context of the code that it's looking at. And that's a really important thing when we talk about AI, machine learning, and everything else, is the boundaries, right? We're human, we want to keep the human element, and we've made it as a pair programmer. You're still in control, so you need to iterate, you need to review, and understand the context of what you're asking. But it doesn't take over the world. So we can go back to the slides. So I want to thank you all. I think we're going to join some Q&A in a minute. If you do have any questions, please reach out, and please ask some really good questions for the Q&A bit.
Thank you. I don't know if you've ever watched natural history programming or something like that. With video footage of something like a sloth, tree sloth, and it moves incredibly slowly and kind of shakes in the branch and things like that. I suspect I look at the sloth the same way that April looks at me. There's a lot of information there. I suspect it was excellent, but I'm not terribly sure. Anyway, can I ask up onto the stage? Thank you very much. Can I ask up onto the stage now Paul McFarlane and Mark Temple to join this question and answer session? Now, some of you will have seen them already this morning. They were in here for the breakout sessions. But once they get seated, I'm going to ask them to do a brief introduction each, just in case you weren't in the room at the time, because there's bound to be a few folk that aren't. And Paul, if you wouldn't mind kicking off as you're seated already, just a brief introduction, please.
My name is Paul McFarlane. I am the Head of Managed Service Operations for a company called Quorum Network Resources. We're a managed service provider and consultancy company based in Edinburgh. I've been there for 3 years, but I've got about 20 years working in IT service, looking after service desk, change management, and major incident management.
Okay. And Mark?
Mark Temple. I'm Assistant Director for Service Management at the University of Glasgow. I've been here for 33 years, so quite a varied career. Started life as a motor mechanic in the university, worked through many IT roles, and I haven't been found out yet.
It's early days yet, Mark. Early days. Right, any questions from the floor? We can either do this on microphones or you can do it in Slido if you wish. Just there, please.
Hi, thanks for the presentations. April, I had a question around regression testing with Copilot. There's obviously millions of lines of legacy code out there. Have you tried to apply it to legacy code, and how good are the regression tests? Because it's one of the big trials as a developer is having to have a regression test for every piece of code you develop. So I'd just like your views on that, please. Thanks.
So when you say regression tests, are you a big fan of unit testing?
Yes.
So I'm a big fan of unit tests because you can run small functional unit tests pretty quickly. Having worked on the product groups at Microsoft and with the engineering teams at GitHub, so we run on the Azure DevOps product group, we run over 50,000 unit tests per pull request, right? I'm a big fan of small, short-running unit tests. This clip did show the testing capability to write it. In terms of regression tests, it's a lot bigger. So when you are using AI, you're tokenizing the input of what you're asking it to do. So the limit currently with the models is 32,000 tokens, and that token is a certain chunk of a word effectively. It's not the whole word, it's a partial piece of the word. So if you have a large code base, that's why we've come up with the customization piece. So you're indexing your code effectively as data. So when you're talking about long-running regression tests or long-running functional tests, it's pretty good with that. However, it's dependent on the model size. So we often write it, encouraged from a developer perspective to use unit tests because they're a lot shorter and easier to run.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions from the floor? We've got a couple of questions here on Slido. This is a good one. Mark, can you explain how you manage knowledge across various departments within the university and the rules and guidance that are applied?
Okay. Every knowledge article has an owner. Every knowledge article, well, has an author as well. They may be the same person at the start. That may drift as we go on. Every knowledge article has a shelf life where it will be reviewed. We have triggers in place to make sure if someone's given a bad review, usually that's HR policies. You don't like the article, but the article is actually the fact. But that will trigger to the owner of that article if something's wrong. We also, they go through QA before they are published. So someone will look at it from an accessibility point of view to start off with. You know, is it, do we have yellow text on a white background? Do we have small font? Do we have broken links, et cetera, et cetera? So looking at the quality of it, you know, from an accessibility point of view, but then also is this our gospel on that particular article? We also have a style guide that we adhere to. So a web publishing, you know, we've got 1,600 people who can create the knowledge. Now, I might be in a different frame of mind on a Friday night to I'm on a Monday morning, and I go and write the same article but do it slightly differently, et cetera, et cetera. So we try to get a consistent look, feel, tone, and, you know, I say all being accessible at the same time. So hopefully that. But it's, you know, trying to be as light touch as possible. You know, it's not going. Every article's not going before a committee. We are trusting people to, you know, to behave themselves and to, you know, they know what good looks like.
Question here from Graham R. This is for all the panel, but I'm going to start with you if that's okay. Can you describe what the tipping point will be for AI to be considered, brackets, normal?
I think it is already normal, isn't it? We started our...
Perhaps within your particular world, but there's lots of people out there who have no idea what the hell it is.
Yeah, that is true. But then at the same time, they're also using artificial intelligence in their daily course, isn't it? So it's not that there would be a certain point at which we can say now it is a norm. I think it has already become a norm consciously or subconsciously. We're using AI in so many different ways that it is actually difficult to count that. So I don't think that's future. I think that is today.
Okay, Paul?
I think it's going to be difficult to manage that. You've got a lot of, from our background, you've got a lot of companies and clients, etc., who are still struggling with Intune and moving forward with that kind of platform, and then you're introducing AI into that fold as well. So it's going to, from a client base, it's going to take quite a long time, and until we get the understanding from Microsoft and from other areas around how data is governed and managed, that's going to be probably the deciding factor on how much it's used. It's probably part of everybody's life at the moment anyway, in every day. Using Copilot, asking questions and things like that. But in terms from a business sense, it's going to probably be defined around the data governance and the guidelines of use.
Okay, April.
I mean, so Microsoft, I say we, I don't work for Microsoft anymore. Microsoft announced a Copilot for everyone, right? They've taken our GitHub Copilot, called it Copilot, and announce Copilot in the M365 suite, in Azure, and all the places, right? We've tried to commoditize it. Is it normal? Not for everyone yet, but it helps us, and we don't always realize it. So if you're using PowerPoint, creating a presentation, or writing a Word doc, you have that capability of Copilot in there to help you. It doesn't take over, but once you start using it and going, wow, it's helped me get started on writing documentation and making it accessible for everyone, it's actually helped with accessibility needs, because there's accessibility needs that I might have that you might not have. You might be colorblind, I'm not, and I may actually just forget because I don't have that accessibility requirement. So it's actually helped quite a bit with that, and we don't always realize it. But even, you know, in the apps we consume on our phones, they're giving us insights, right? Smart homes, etc. I love my smart home. It tells me when I'm spending too much or doing too many things. But we don't even always realize it, but we're making it a commodity to help ease the burden off of all of us with the things that we don't like doing. So it's not quite normal, but we're trying to make it part of the day-to-day and make you a bit more conscious of it.
Okay. And finally, Mark.
I was hoping you'd forgotten about me.
No. You can hide all you like, but I can still see you.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's building trust. It's building, you know, if you get your fingers burnt the first time you use it, are you going to come back to it? Probably not. But I think it's also managing expectations. There's too much hype, I think, around AI, and some people believe all of it. So I think it's finding your own feet. It's finding where it works within your organisation or you personally. You know, that's kind of where I am with it. I don't say we're not, and I think I'm not going to speak, you know, in general for my organisation that we're going to throw everything in there. We see a different side. I mean, the generative side of AI. I'm going to go slightly off topic here, but forgive me. Stay with me for a minute. You know, NHE, it's a big thing, obviously, from an assessment point of view, and it gets. There have been horror stories, etc. You know, that one, it can aid learning, but two, it can aid cheating. So, you know, we're looking at it probably from a slightly different viewpoint at the moment, rather than a company that is using it to generate revenue.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'm not going to read out this question about if AI is making our burgers, what will art school graduates do now? I was an art school graduate. Never flipped a burger in my life. Tasty tatty, and that was different. Shalini, you talked about continuous learning for your models. How do you deal with bias issues during the learning, continuous learning?
Yeah, I think that's a tough one. I don't think I have the expertise where I train the data, I train the models myself with the data. But I think there are different mechanisms by which you can ensure that there is no biasness in the data, and organizations are trying to apply them. There is still a lot to do on that front, I would say, but it's all a journey right now. I don't think I have a concrete answer to give you at the moment, but if we connect later, maybe, you know, together we can find out what always can be employed and think about it together.
Okay. Any questions from the floor? Right, gentleman there, please. Microphone's just coming up behind you.
And this is more a question for April. In GitHub Copilot, many companies have like sensitive data in their code bases. Is there any work happening on, for example, making a Copilot where data never leaves a company's internal servers?
Yes, so to start off, we have a trust center that we've produced in terms of how your data is used, so public data. That's explicitly around public data. I won't get into the nitty-gritty of that. There's a whole website. GitHub's legal often engages with customers to discuss it, and get into detail on that. But that's the customization piece that we touched on a little bit. So all the repositories I showed you are private repositories, so they're not public. It's github.com. We don't give access to you all. As an internal employee, I do. I'm showing it to you all because I can. But yeah, that's all privatized data. So the customization piece indexes your code and learns from the way you use it. And we've absolutely done that because customers have private data. They don't want it exposed publicly. Absolutely fair. And that's why we've come up with the customization. And then the fine tuning goes a step deeper into training your own model effectively with Copilot and using it on that specific data.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. At the front here, please. They're fighting over you.
The question about art students wasn't mine, but it's actually quite an interesting one. What do you see in terms of the impact on society, economies, the world? What do you see the ripple effect?
No, I think the question is still actually very valid. But what if I told you that in that restaurant there are still human beings who are actually taking care that the robots are working fine? They're still there to ensure that the customer experience is not ruined. If they really want to talk to someone, they can. So while the point is valid that we are having these kind of replacements by the robots, by the technology, and we might also think that there are job cuts and whatnot replacing human beings. But this is why I also said that humans they have to leverage the AI. Rather than letting the AI replace the humans, we got to think how the world is gonna get better with the help of AI. We saw the example of Anne, right? Over there, it is not possible. Anne has been in that situation for 18 years. It has not been possible for a human to help her in any way. But the human touch was still important there, because if you noted, for 18 years, Anne's husband stuck to her. He did not leave her alone. But at the same time, machine learning model was able to read the human brain signals from Anne's brain and were able to convert that to this speech. So we got to find the balance somewhere. I don't think the world will be taken down by AI one day. I don't think that's gonna happen. Humans will have to keep the hope right and will have to leverage the AI in the right way.
I must confess, I'm one of the people who is a bit concerned about this, Paul. I think it was said earlier today that humans should spend time where it is needed. So you take away the boring, repetitive stuff and blah blah blah. What I've never entirely got my head around is where is the evidence that that's what actually happens?
So we do a lot with that. We actually have that published on we have blogs published. We have mechanisms in which you can track that internally. So what we do is when we engage with customers we'll do a trial with GitHub Copilot, and we're afraid we're gonna lose our job as developers, as technologists. I just wanna reference you back to when we worked on physical servers and machines. Then virtualization came in. How many of you remember that shift? How many of you thought you were gonna be out of a job? But I had to shift my technology skill set to deal with that. And then we had this cloud native containerization thing, and then we had the cloud. I know working for Amazon, you've probably had this with customers. Customers will come to me and be like, our data centers are gone now. No, we still use data centers. It's someone else's machine. This is another paradigm shift. We measure impact on users. So I kind of showed you that graph of like actual time to write code or to do a thing. We go in and engage with the customer, and we have a developer or an engineer do a task. And no AI on their own takes 5 hours, hypothetically. What might take me 5 hours to write, Shalini might do in 2 because she's a better engineer than me, great. But it took me 5 hours. We measure that time, then we give them the same task with AI or GitHub Copilot, and maybe it's done in 30 minutes or 45 minutes. They're more effective. The other thing we're doing with GitHub Copilot is we're taking away those menial tasks. How many of you love boring tasks? Yeah, I don't either. Especially those things you're like, oh, just take me 15 minutes. And you do them every single day. You can't take a holiday. You can't walk away from all those things. We take away a lot of those menial, repetitive tasks, and we're using Copilot AI to do that. So you're actually being a lot more proactive. Same thing as we do in cloud. We're scripting things. We're making less error. We're be able to scale a lot more. So we're measuring that impact in a lot of those ways. We've also measured carbon footprint, accessibility. It's helped with accessibility as well. Imagine someone that doesn't have 2 hands to type or has just a difference of use of their body, being able to verbalize to AI how you want to do something, to type some out. Using voice to text is really helpful for a lot of people, and that's where GitHub Copilot Chat was really good. So we are measuring those impacts of time saved and being more proactive. We also measure developer happiness, which is the fluffiest metric, but it comes down to retention of your team, and also scalability, and we're measuring happiness based off of retention in teams and less turnover.
But you are talking as someone who is exceptionally bright and very talented and has umpteen options. And there are bound to be a lot of people out there in society who have none of those things, who are quite happy bumbling away down at the bottom end, etc., who might actually like really quite boring, repetitive jobs because that's what they're fit to do. And if you take that away from them, what do?
That's always been tech, though. We've always been I mean, I've worked in companies where if you don't keep up,
They take you around the back of the barn.
there are still there are still organizations that have requirements for repetitive tasks, absolutely. But I think as an industry, we have had to adapt and learn and become relevant. We have to stay relevant and stay knowledgeable.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to get across here is, and I'd be interested to hear everybody's views on this. The people making these decisions are people like you. So you are making decisions for people who, will have implications for people who are completely unlike you. How do you ensure that the world stays as a safe, comfortable, viable place for them?
And I think that's, so we were talking about a news article earlier about some of the governments coming into play. And as humans, same thing with cloud. We're trying to make the right decision for what's safe. We don't know. And now, when you say me, I'm not making decisions for everyone's career. No, I don't want that responsibility. But from a protection standpoint, we are putting boundaries and limits around what AI can do. And we're still learning. As humans, we're still learning. We're trying to make the best decisions we can, and we have to learn as we go, unfortunately. But there's still, there's a place for everyone, and there's still legacy technology out there. I have a very good friend of mine in the US that makes way too much money maintaining legacy stuff, but that's what the organization requires, and that's what he does. So there's still a place.
Your thoughts on that, Paul?
I think if you look, we're going to be moving forward with it anyway, so I think the decision is made and the boat has sailed. We're on it. We've been doing that same with technology for quite some time. If you look at car manufacturing and things like that as well, all the guys that were working with it, or guys and gals working in the car manufacturing world, that now no longer doing that because automation is in place. That's been there for quite some time now. That's not anything
So they
new.
were not released to go and do more interesting stuff or develop their careers. They were
no,
just released.
They were, but I think that's where we kind of have a responsibility as decision makers within that. AI is going to be fantastic, and it's going to take control of all sort of the technical capabilities of what companies and things can do, but there has to be a moral interpretation of how you implement that and make the decisions on that. The way that we use it, or the way that we want to do it, is for the betterment of staff. We want to create a harmony with that, and I think that's kind of what most people want to do, is to create that symbolic relationship where it isn't replacing a person, it's aiding that person to do something better. When we're working in an environment where we've got a lot of focus around 4-day weeks and things like that, and giving people the time back to work and to be with their families, to do their own things while still being able to work, we're actually freeing people to do that by introducing AI in some ways, or potentially freeing people to do that, because they're not bound to their desk anymore. They're not bound to doing tasks that require them to sit there endlessly for hours and hours upon a day. They're actually able to go back and have a bit of a work-life balance because the mundane's not being done. And for the guys in my team as well, they probably don't want to be doing the same thing. Everybody's got a progression path. Everybody wants to be better than they probably are. There may be some people that are good at exactly what they do, and we'll have to find a way to deal with that, because we have a moral obligation to do that. But I think as we grow, we've got to be very careful about how we link the two. I think it's a hybrid, it's not a replacement.
Is this something that's discussed at Glasgow University, Mark?
Oh, probably. Yeah, from a personal point of view, though, I get everything that Paul's saying there, and I think it's the pace that we do. It's like any change, folk will be uncomfortable with it. The reality is, yes, with every change, on this scale, people will lose their jobs, is the reality of it. A lot of people will be able to, as we say, move on to do other things, or will have part of their role augmented, supplemented by it for the good. But the reality is, yes, there will be, and I'm not going to use the word collateral damage, there will be, people will, that is the reality of it. Nothing I can do to change that, I'm afraid. But I do look at it optimistically, that we introduce it in our own workspaces at a pace that makes sense for us, and we do it as sensitively as we can. We can't change everything out there. It's not in our gift. So we change what we can change. We affect what we can, and that is to introduce it where it's relevant, where it is adding value, rather than it's a slash and burn. We can release half the workforce. You know, that's not where we want to be as a society. So it's a mixture of the, I say, taking a, you know, I think we do need to take an ethical view to start with. But again, that's down to the culture of your organisation. You know, if you work in a place that numbers are down 5%, right, get rid of 10% of the workforce, then you know you're going to love, you know, introducing something that's going to do that kind of thing. I don't, thankfully, and I'm hopefully most people in this room don't work in that kind of organisation. So it's, yeah, going back to where it's appropriate, finding the best uses for it, and doing it, you know, at a pace that, like any other change, that the humans can keep up with.
Who's setting the pace at the moment?
Not me.
That's difficult to say. But what I want to say is that while we can think of, you know, AI will take the jobs, fine, and at the same time, I think it would create the jobs as well. Right? There was one report from McKinsey, I think, which I was reading. And while the numbers are not equivalent, it's not that it would take hundreds of thousands of jobs, so we'll create the hundreds of thousands of jobs. But certainly at some point, there would be a balance to it. I understand that not everyone is looking for these, you know, let's say tech-based jobs. But is it also not about educating the people and making them more brighter? Right? We can also leverage the AI to educate the people who have less leverage. ChatGPT can be used for free, right? So imagine the number of countries and the number of kids who are actually not able to leverage you know, the education, but now they can for free. So, like, probably I don't have the answer to your question straight, but I think there would be some balance somewhere.
Okay. It was said earlier today that, you know, chatbots are the unsung heroes of the workplace and what have you. But the vast majority of people still would like to talk to a human being rather than a chatbot. I think I know what the problem is there. Chatbots are resolutely cheerful. You really want a chatbot who will sound bored, harassed, pissed off.
That is the best Scottish answer I've ever heard.
Well, the fact of the matter is, when I get through to a call centre, I want the person on the other side of the line to be having a worse day than me. You know, preferably called Bronwyn in a very rainy Cardiff. You know, so if you could modify the chatbots to sound just a little more, oh God, what do you want?
We actually can.
Can
I work with a Microsoft colleague who builds up what's it called? Azure Data Studio, and we can modify how it responds. We can ask it to be snarky. We can set those parameters when you build the models. It's a lot of fun. Highly recommend. There's a question here about training the data for like ChatGPT-4 and Copilot at Microsoft. ChatGPT-4 is public data, so it's feeding off of what's public information. What we're using with Copilot is based off of OpenAI. We use different models for a lot of the different stuff. The customization stuff uses different models. But we are hiring engineers to build that. So there's a lot with data. There's a lot of learning. Microsoft has made a huge commitment to the UK to skill up in AI. So while jobs may shuffle, as they do in any industry, there's been a huge commitment from the Big Five to skill up the upcoming workforce. For any of you that have kids, the jobs they work in tomorrow don't exist today. I forget what the stat was, but like 20% of the jobs that our kids are going to work in don't even exist, or 30%. The world's going to shift a bit, but hopefully for the better. And yeah, when any adoption of any tool, we look to see how does it benefit us. Shorter work weeks, absolutely. I want to spend more time with my dog. I want to go on holiday. You know, absolutely, it's happening, but we have to see what actually works for us.
I'm inclined to leave it there, so can I ask you to thank our four panelists one more time, please? If you could just bear with me for a couple of minutes, I'd just like to thank all of our speakers today. They've been uniformly excellent, and thank you to our conference partners and exhibitors and sponsors. Those badges you've got around your neck, by all means take them home if you want, but Digit can recycle them, so just drop them off at the desk if you don't want to keep it as a souvenir. There's a drinks reception next in the Stratosphere. Stay on and join it if you can. There is a post-conference survey too. There's always a post-conference survey, but with Digit, the feedback's really valuable. They do go through them all and they do act on any suggestions. The comments don't all need to be positive. If there's anything you thought could be sharpened up or tightened, they would be as delighted to hear about that as anything else. They hope to improve constantly. And Digit also want the conference to be a forum for practitioners to learn and share. They're very keen to extend their pool of speakers. So if you've got an insight or a case study you would like to speak on, they would like to hear from you. If you're sitting next to someone you fancy landing in it, suggest them instead. Much better idea. Upcoming events, Scott Secure Summit, Wednesday the 27th of March here. Digit Expo West, that's the Glasgow leg of Scotland's largest technology event. That's on Wednesday the 29th of May at the SEC. The ESG Innovation Summit that was mentioned earlier today, back here, Dynamic Earth, on Thursday the 20th, and you can get details on how to book on the Digit website at www.digit.fyi. Thank you very much for staying the course. If you're not staying for the drinks, then a safe journey home, and thank you for your attention. Thank you.